this is undoubtedly one of the most historic and riveting elections in my lifetime. Let's start with Senator John McCain. The comeback story here is a saga for all times. I mean, he was flat broke, and he's managed to work his way toward, within, very close reach of the Republican nomination. This is the most interesting Republican maverick, I think, since Teddy Roosevelt. He's also in many ways, the first authentic GOP centrist since perhaps Eisenhower. This is really historic stuff. On the Democratic side, two extremely worthy candidates have moved to the top. But let me say a word about Senator Obama. This is really a pretty astonishing story as well. A little-known African-American politician from the state of Illinois, within reach also of the presidential nomination. I can only think of one other presidential candidate from Illinois who started out with so little name recognition and actually so little experience in high office, and who catapulted to the top. His name was Abraham Lincoln. Now, Senator Obama, up till now, has been more centrist in style than in substance. I think Hillary's right about that. But he's also a very smart and supple politician, and I think he's going to make adjustments. If Obama turns out to be the nominee, he's not going to let himself be caught way out there on a limb on the far left that McCain will easily saw off. So all of this actually raises an important basic question for our study, and that is, have events passed it by? Is the era of hyper-partisanship basically over? Are we at the dawn, as is being said, of a post-partisan age? Trust me, we're not. The differences between Democrats and Republicans run very deep on certain key issues. And the differences are not just at the level of the political elites. They actually drop all the way down to the level of the mass electorate, or a considerable segment of it. But, keep this in mind, and this is the very first point I really want to emphasize. Our partisan divide in 2008 pales in comparison with other historical periods in the history of this country, and it pales with the partisan disputes that go on, the intensity of the partisan disputes that go on in various other democracies. No one in this room is going to tell me that we're quarreling more than this country did back in the mid-19th century over slavery, for example, when members of Congress caned each other, literally caned each other, and then we wound up eventually with a civil war. And no one is going to even tell me that our partisan conflicts exceed those of the first decades of our republic. Just remember the election of 1828 between Andrew Jackson and John Quincy Adams, for example. The supporters of those two candidates hurled slurs and insults at each other that, as Bill Clinton colorfully put it, would have blistered the hairs off a dog's back. And he was absolutely right. Partisanship actually gets a pretty bad rap. And it's silly to give it a bad rap. I have a lot of respect for example, former Senator Bob Graham of Florida, but he wrote in the Post recently an article in which he spoke about the need to, quote, cut out the cancer of partisanship. Well, partisanship is not a cancer, I don't think. Parties are essential to a viable democracy. Without them, you cannot organize politics. You can't. A democracy does not function without partisanship. And the more distinct the parties are, in some ways, the better. When there was not a, quote, a dime's worth of difference, as we used to say, between Democrat and Republican candidates, it actually had a negative effect on political participation. Voters got bored by two parties that were too much alike. With the parties more polarized, they've been energized, they're engaged, and they're turning out in much bigger numbers.